All right, imagine finally getting what you long for, that freedom, only to find out it was new kind of prison, which many people call anxiety. Now, you walk out the gate, the air feels different, the noise is louder, sky somehow looks wider. Everyone is telling you, hey, congratulations, you're free now. Welcome home. But here's the question nobody prepares you. Why does that moment possibilities explode for you? Silent battle starts. Today, we're diving into what I call the post-release paradox, the uncomfortable truth that more opportunities can actually lead to more. Not because you're ungrateful, not because you're broken, but because freedom itself can be overwhelming, survived in survival mode for years. Welcome to Conviction Fiction. All right, guys, welcome back to the Conviction Fiction. And today we're going to dive into the paradox of prison freedom. Like, what happens when that moment of release is that's something that we all imagine for years, sometimes decades. It takes some time for us to regain that. Now you picture the gate open, paperwork finished up, they're out, you're good. You imagine relief washing over you like a wave, and for a moment, it does. It feels great to be home. It feels great to be out. That freedom feels real in those first 2 minutes. I mean, the air, you smell the air different. I can remember when I got out, I was like, it smells so much different out here. Like the sky was wider. Even the smallest things, sitting in the car, I think I've chronicled my first ride home with my sister and my family leaving the penitentiary. And holding a phone, like without hiding, uh, hiding the phone, let's just happen. You get to choose what you eat. That's something that's sometimes overlooked. All that can feel monumental. People hugging you, like welcome you home, and man, you're free now. I'm so glad you made it. We miss you. But here's the part nobody really prepares you for. Freedom doesn't arrive clean. The initial relief often masks a deeper psychological reality. Now, incarceration conditions the mind to survive inside rigid structure. Every hour is accounted for, every movement regulated, every consequence is immediate and clear. So it's very restrictive, but it's almost predictable. Now, freedom, on the other hand, is unstructured. And that lack of structure can feel destabilizing. Many returning citizens expect freedom to feel simple. Instead, it feels overwhelming. The world doesn't slow down to make adjustments. Bills don't wait. Technology doesn't pause. Social norms aren't explained. You're expected to just know how to reintegrate, as if years of confinement didn't fundamentally change how you process the world. This is where the illusion shows up. Freedom is sold as the finish line, but in reality, it's the starting point of a new kind of struggle, one that's quieter and often harder to explain. You're no longer fighting a visible system. You're fighting anxiety, self-doubt, and the pressure to perform normally in a society that doesn't fully understand survive. Now, when we talk about survival, we're not making it on this program, never will make it seem as though we were victims, right? We're just saying we survived a traumatic experience. Prison is pretty much traumatic for most of us. I mean, it doesn't mean like a terrorization. You can see all kinds of stuff that goes on in prison. Some people even participate in that stuff. Luckily, I was able to leave unscathed, right? But just being around that environment can actually alter the way you view it. For many returning citizens, the body is free, but the nervous system still locked into survival mode. Hypervigilance doesn't turn off just because the gate closed behind you. My wife points out to me all the time how it seems like I'm always on alert, that when I'm out in public, that I can't seem to relax. Um, Loud noises still kind of trigger me. And, I do suffer when crowded spaces. I'm in crowded spaces. I feel threatened a lot of times. Right? I don't know why, but it's something that we try to unpack on this show. Because if you are going through those things, please come on, share your story, drop a comment, drop a like, subscribe, and we love to hear your story, even have you on the show. Now, silence can feel just as uncomfortable in chaos, because when when I was incarcerated, like, for silence, you would sleep, but you wouldn't sleep, if that makes sense. Because there was always some noise with the guard coming through with count time, dangling keys or doors slamming. It was always like you were in a dungeon, right? Even though you tried to sleep, you hear like constantly banging, someone yelling, crying for help. Like, it was weird. And then the emotional whiplash. Inside, most of us dreamed about freedom as peace. We thought, like, once we got outside, we're going to find peace. And outside, freedom feels like exposure. You're seen again, judged again, expected again. Same society that once discarded you now expects productivity, gratitude, and flawless decision making. I mean, almost immediately. And we know that that's not the case. This is why some people say, I thought getting out would fix everything, when it actually didn't. Not because they were naive, but because hope was the only thing keeping them going. Being out doesn't erase trauma. It doesn't undo loss. It doesn't restore time with your children, your parents, or loved ones. And it certainly doesn't give you instant clarity about who you are now. Freedom basically removes the wall. It also removes the excuse. That can be terrifying. Suddenly, there's no count time to hide behind, no routine forcing your movement, no institutional identity to lean on. You're faced with a deeper question: who am I now, without that number, the label, or schedule that I was used to? Who am? That's the illusion of freedom. Not that freedom is false, but that it's incomplete without healing, support, and understanding. Now, freedom opens the door, but it doesn't tell you how to walk through the room. And for many returning citizens, many people listen to the show, the hardest part is getting out, learning how to live once you. That's what we're going to tackle today on this show, right? It's an element of choice that I want to discuss at this stage of the episode, because one of the biggest shocks after release isn't taking me. Let's suddenly act. Inside, choices are pretty limited by design. Where, when you eat, where you go, who you see, how long you stay outside. Most decisions are made for you. And while that lack of control is dehumanizing, it also creates a strange kind of certainty. You don't have to decide, you just have to comply. You know what to expect. Then you are finally relieved. Overnight, the world hands you an overwhelming menu of decisions. Right? I can remember going to the grocery store for the first time in a long time. And I was locked up 15 years. And I went to a grocery store, and it's amazing how many different bags of chips there really are. Sounds simple, but there are choices. Now, when you're thinking about choices, you also have to think about things that are going to go out, like, where are you going to live? What kind of job should you take? any job or the right job? Who do you need to reconnect with, and who do you need to leave behind? More importantly, what version of yourself do you want to? Every decision suddenly feels loaded. This is where the weight of choice becomes crushing instead of, giving you that freedom. Um, when we talk about returning citizens, decisions don't exist in the they're tied to fear, judgment, and consequences that feel permanent. A bad decision doesn't just feel like a mistake. It feels like that confirmation, you know what I mean, of every negative stereotype you've ever fought against. If you make a mistake, it's more condemnation or confirmation of those narratives that have been created for you. That's how analysis paralysis. Too many options don't always create. Sometimes they create shut down. I tell you, you'll replace scenario, overthink conversation. You delay action because you're trying to calculate the safest possible outcome in a world that no longer has clear rules. The world that you left had clear rules. Go to bed at a certain time, wake up at a certain time, go outside for this amount of hours, eat this. You have a limited choice from the commissary. Eat that. But now you have other things going on and paralysis. Now, like I said, the consequences inside were pretty harsh, but predictable. Outside, consequences feel ambiguous, and that ambiguity fuels anxiety. There's also an unspoken pressure that sits heavy on the chest of many artists. Like, being given a second chance, really can't mess it up. That's that pressure. You out, you don't want to mess it up. All these choices, and depending on the amount of resources that you may end up making a mistake. That same pressure turns everyday decisions into high stakes tests. Choosing a job feels like choosing a future identity. Saying no to someone feels like risking isolation, like they ain't gonna mess with you. Saying yes feels like risking relapse, burnout, or a promise. Some people hesitate, not because they don't want success, but because success now feels too fragile. It's like walking on eggshell. Being returning citizens are navigating choice without a safety net. There's no room for trial and error, no cushion for failure. I know for me, mistakes didn't feel like learning experience. They felt like cliffs, like jumped off the cliff, I'll make a bad decision. When you combine that with financial pressure, family expectations, role requirements, and social stigma, this mental load becomes exhausting. This is why some people stay in situations they know aren't healthy for them. This is why others avoid opportunities they actually want. And why, for me, anxiety showed up as procrastination, withdrawal, even self sabotage. It's not that returning citizens don't know what we know what to do. It's that every choice feels like it carries the weight of their entire past and our future at the same damn time. Choice requires confidence. Confidence requires safety. And to be honest, safety is something many people are still trying to rebuild. Freedom gives you that options, but without guidance, support, and grace, those options can feel more like traps than pathways. That's what we're exploring in this episode. Because the truth is, learning how to choose again is a skill. One that incarceration interrupts. One that, for in my case, 15 years, I wasn't taught that choices. We hear it all the time. It's kind of almost cliche when we're in class, like, the decision you made today is going to do. But even the routine stuff, what time I go to bed, I was in a comfort zone. I knew what time to go, right? And this is going to take time. We learn without shame. Because the goal is not to make perfect choices, but the goal is to make forward choices, right? So let's navigate those unseen. We talk about, the many myriad of choices that we have. And so when people think about reentry marriages, the first thing they think about is like the record. Yeah, the record matters. It closes doors. It delays opportunities. We discuss how to get around or work around, um, how to change the narrative about your record in this episodes. It does delay opportunities. It can force explanation. No one else has to give because we are a unique society, right? But the most exhaustive barriers are often the ones that we can't see. They show up in body language, hesitation, in the way a conversation shifts. Your past becomes known or suspected. You feel it in job interviews that start warm and end up cold. I know for me, most recently, I've been coaching. I've been coaching youth baseball for 4 or 5 years. My son plays baseball, and one of the other kids on our team, his dad is like, well, it's two dads on the team, two separate kids. One is like a lead detective for one of the county agencies, and the other one is like system analysis or threat analysis with the police department. And here I am coaching their kids in baseball. And you know how people look up stuff and blah blah blah, and social media and become friends on Facebook, become friends on Instagram, and then wow, your coach has a podcast called the Conviction Fiction, right? So it is funny because I'm like, oh man, this is the lead detective for police for a county department, and here's the police department system analysis. He's a cop, right? Um, and it was awkward. He even had to come. It's like, hey, I ran across your podcast. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's why I stress to the boys that the choices you make today in practice are going to determine how you perform on the field. Baseball is full of choices. So being able to change the narrative, and they've been around me for years. These parents have been around me. They never knew. They never knew. They was like, coach is really about responsible choices. He talk about responsibility and accountability all the time when he's coaching our kids. But I think they found out why I have that whole stick going, or that whole mindset going when it comes to coaching baseball. So those social spaces were felt con guess it kind of felt conditional because, but it was kind of awkward for me because at first it was awkward for me, but then I realized like this is what I have to do. I am changing the narrative. Now it could have created a low level tension, feeling of I'm going to always be evaluated. Many returning citizens describe life after release like living under a microscope, not because someone is watching, but because the fear of judgment never really leaves. You are aware that one misstep could be used to define you all over again. That pressure to overperform just to be considered equal, to be extra punctual, extra agreeable. You have to prove that you're not that person when no one else is being asked to do anything at all. Now, over time, this constant self-monitoring takes a serious mental toll. It can lead to chronic stress, sleep disruption, anxiety, emotional exhaustion, perhaps most damaging of all, self-doubt. You can start questioning your worth, your belonging, your legitimacy. Even when opportunities appear, imposter syndrome whispers, you don't really. It's figure you out. So instead of stepping fully into opportunity, people hold back. And that's what I didn't do with my baseball team. I didn't hold back. I didn't minimize myself. I didn't play small to avoid being exposed. And in doing so, I am really taking control of the very progress I've worked so hard to. This is especially painful because, um, the subject. This is especially painful because many returning citizens are doing right. They show up, they stay clean, they work hard, and they give back. But the internal battle doesn't match the external progress. There's always that weight of stigma in relationships. Family dynamic shift. Old friends expect the same version of you. You got new circles that don't even know what to do with you or your story. So many people are caught honest and being safe between sharing their truth and protecting their future. So let me just be clear. Um, I don't believe in constantly having to explain by to humanity or my humanity. I shouldn't have to explain or justify my humanity. You should not have to explain or justify your humanity. It's exhausting. You're human. You made a mistake. The unseen barriers aren't just systemic, they're psychological. They're reinforced every time society treats reentry as a privilege instead of a process. Like you ain't never made a mistake. You just didn't get caught. The result of, denying your humanity, quiet erosion of confidence. You start to ask yourself questions like, am I really capable of more? Um, Maybe you might ask, do I belong in spaces like this? Is this an opportunity? Is it a real opportunity or just something temporary? Now, those doubts don't come from weakness. They come from repeated exposure without intentional support. Those doubts can become internalized. They can turn external barriers internal. That's the danger of unseen. Those things that people don't talk about. They just don't block access. They reshape your entire identity. Until we acknowledge them, until we have podcasts like this, many returning citizens will continue fighting battles no one else can see. They'll just keep doing it. Now, how do you rebuild beyond those basic mental health needs? Now, most reentry conversations start and end with survival, right? How are you going to survive housing? How are you going to survive employment? I survive transportation or lack of transportation? Will I be able to survive the compliance or the rules that my PO may have set on? And don't get it twisted. Those things matter. You can't heal if you're hungry. You can't dream or think about other stuff if you're unstable. That goes back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Go back and check out that show. It's on YouTube. It's also can be streamed from Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music. It's pretty much everywhere. But you can't do or be in a safe space, a creative space, a space that will allow you to grow if you don't have some basic needs met, right? You can't focus on growth if you're worried about where you're going to be sleeping. But here's the truth that most people don't talk about enough. Survival is not the same thing as living. At some point after release, sometimes weeks, sometimes years, a deeper question surfaces. Like, all there, they out the way. You have a job, but you feel empty. You have housing, but you don't feel settled because you might end up you're thinking about survival. Like, how can I keep this house? You're doing better, but you don't feel whole. This is where reentry becomes emotional. It's logistical because incarceration teaches survival skills. Let's just be honest. It's not about healing skills. It trains you to suppress emotion, not process them, and to stay alert, never to be vulnerable. You have to protect yourself, right? And when you come home, no one hands you a roadmap for undoing that condition. Of course, there are those classes, but you go to those classes, but you have to go back to the dorm, or you have to go back to the pod. You got to go back to your cell if you do those classes, right? And there are some safe spaces in prison where they have the honor dorms or treatment dorms that you kind of can be in, or like the therapeutic community dorms where they try as much as they can to bring freedom and choice inside. The emotional healing, mental health aspects of it. At the end of the day, you're still locked up. You're still in a penitentiary. Trauma doesn't disappear when that gate opens. It's been going. Grief doesn't expire just because your sin is dead. The emotional weight of his birthday, broken relationship, violence, all that stuff that you weren't dealing with while you were locked up, all of that comes with you when you're out. Quietly, patient, all waiting. This is where many reentry programs, and yes, many reentry podcasts, stop short. They celebrate the win of being home, but they don't sit with the discomfort of staying home. They highlight the success stories. I even highlight them on here, but I try not to skip the messy middle. We can talk about policy, but let's talk about panic attacks. Okay, let's talk about panic attacks. We can talk about jobs, but let's talk about the identity crisis that comes with starting over at the bottom. That's what makes this podcast different. We don't chase clickbait. We don't reduce people to mug shots or redemption slogans or highlight, oh, did you see this person get stabbed today in prison? We don't pretend healthier or healing. We don't pretend that healing is linear or inspirational all the time. We talk about the real stuff, the stuff people whisper about but rarely say out loud. They don't say this out loud. The loneliness after relief, the anger that doesn't make sense. We talk about shame showing up in rooms you work hard to earn access to, but you're ashamed because you don't want to be found out. You don't want people to know that, hey, like I made it. They knew I was in prison. Maybe they'll kick me out of it. They're going to start looking at me. They, oh, better watch your stuff around him. You talk about rebuilding relationships when trust is fragile because thriving requires more than a paycheck. It's real. Thriving means reconnecting with your emotions without being overwhelmed by them. It means learning how to trust again, yourself and others. It means redefining purpose beyond just staying out of trouble. And for many returning citizens, that's the hardest part. Belonging doesn't come automatic. Community doesn't just, and authenticity can feel risky in a society that treats you fast as your headline. I still deal with it. I got members of my own family today that's like, okay, we see you got books, we see you got a podcast, we see you going to colleges and talking and got this social following. But guess what? You still a crook. You still did a crime, still robbed people, still sold drugs, still did that. You're not better. That's why so many people feel isolated even while surrounded by it. Podcasts exist to say you're not broken for feeling that way. Because it's disappointing for me. Because I work hard that's part of the healing process is podcast for me. To have people still fight with the character that I built, what I am now, by talking about what I did, It's disheartening. It takes an emotional toll. Reentry isn't just a physical, it's a psychological one that says, I know who I am, can't change. And ignoring that reality doesn't make it, like, it just makes people feel home while they down here. We slow the conversation down, sit in the discomfort or the complexity, because rebuilding beyond basic needs isn't a luxury, it's a necessity if we actually want people to stay free, stay healthy, and stay connected. And if no one told you this yet, man, wanting more than survival doesn't make it, just means that you're human. That's it. You should not argue your humanity or try to defend your humanity to someone constantly. Now, let's talk about some strategies that can help or that have helped me also for this new beginning. Now, if this post-release paradox teaches us anything, anxiety after release isn't a personal failure. It's a predictable response to change. I mean, really massive change. So the question isn't what's wrong with me. The question is really, what do I need to build? Because freedom, like any new skill, requires practice. And the first and most important strategy is normalization. Too many returning citizens suffer in silence because they believe anxiety means that they're weak, ungrateful, or that they're failing. Now, in reality, anxiety is often a sign that you care deeply about protecting the life that you fought to get back. Okay? That's your body telling you that, hey, you don't want to lose that. Right? Naming the struggle boosts some of its power. Now, mental health support is not optional in this. It's foundational. Therapy, peer support groups, trauma-informed counseling, faith leaders, mentors who've actually walked this road. These aren't luxuries. They're stabilizers. That's what this podcast is meant to stabilize or help stabilize what's going on with you and with people like me and you. Right? Hopefully, we can regulate the nervous system that can lead to survival. Let's be clear. Needing help does not erase strength. It proves that you're wise. Now, the second strategy is pretty much simplifying your decision. Now, reentry doesn't require perfect choices. It requires forward motion. Many people stall because they believe one wrong move will undo everything. But growth doesn't work that way, guys. Instead of asking, is this the best possible option? Ask, will this move me one step closer to my ultimate goals? Will this move me one step closer to stability? Incremental progress beats flawless planning every single time, I guarantee it. One interview, one application, one boundary that's set, one honest conversation. Those small wins that I talk about all the time rebuild confidence faster than big dreams with no movement. You have to get those small wins. Now, once you've done that, you get the small wins. That third strategy is to build structure intentionally. That means that we have to understand that incarceration imposed structure. Reentry removes it. Thriving requires replacing it, not with like rigid factions or rigid things, but with rhythm, morning routine, weekly goals, check-ins with accountability, scheduled downtime. And I have some structured exercises that are outlined in Turning Forward, The Work Beyond Fear. It's on Amazon. Go check it out. If you haven't got a copy, or you think you need to give this copy to someone, go pick it up, because we talk about creating weekly goals, setting up a morning routine, finding accountability partners and checking in with them. Structure creates safety, and safety reduces anxiety. Another critical piece is redefining success. Now, success after incarceration, often framed as never messing. That's very unrealistic. and it's very dangerous. Real success is resilience. It's learning how to recover when things don't go as planned without spiraling into shame or self-destruction. I don't know if anybody told you this, but you are allowed to learn. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to grow in public. And that's the final strategy. That final strategy, studying resilience, not just outcomes. Too often, success stories skip the struggle and jump straight to the highlight reel. That creates unrealistic expectations and quiet discouragement. Instead, let's try to pay attention to how people navigated those setbacks, how they asked for help, how they adjusted, how they stayed when leaving would have been easier. There have been plenty of times I wanted to do, plenty of times I wanted to, but I didn't because I studied resilience. It means that every day isn't going to be perfect. There are going to be bad days. And instead of taking it as a bad day and pushing me back, I use it as an experience to say, what is this teaching me? What is this teaching me right now? These stories, these blueprints, these are deeper embedded into our daily life, not because they offer formulas, but because they offer us permission to grow, permission to take your time, permission to redefine who you are becoming, permission to change your narrative. And this is where everything comes full circle, because this post-release paradox isn't a curse, it's a crossroad. More opportunity brings more responsibility, but it also brings something else: choice with intention. Freedom doesn't mean the absence of fear. It means learning how to move with fear without letting it drive you. So if you're navigating reentry right now, hear this clearly. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not alone. Even if you are dealing with recovery, freedom is a skill. Sobriety is a skill. Healing is a process. And thriving is possible one honest step at a time, guys. So let's go ahead and get ready to close this episode of the Conviction Fiction. I want to thank you guys for joining. As always, to all of the followers out there, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend that we are changing the narrative of what it looks like post incarceration. Now, freedom is often framed as the finish line, but for returning citizens like myself, it's the starting point of a deeper fight. And what this episode talked about, the post-release paradox, it actually reminds us that anxiety doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're standing at the edge of possibility without a roadmap. More opportunity brings more pressure, more visibility, and more fear, especially in a world that still hasn't learned how to fully welcome people home. At the Conviction, we don't sanitize that reality. We don't rush healing. And we don't reduce people to redemption headlines. We talk about the real work, internal battle, the unseen barriers, and the quiet courage it actually takes to choose growth and no watching. This episode resonated with you, stay with us. These conversations aren't about inspiration for clicks. They're about truth for survival and growth. Freedom isn't just getting out. It's learning how to live honestly, intentionally, and without shame. Thank you for joining. See you guys next week.